crafters, I'm JanB and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. Today I'd like to show you how I made this box. My friend Sharon, who does my nails for me, she owns her own beauty salon and she sells Matispa products. She had 2 bottles come in with the Christmas goodies, but they came in like this, and she asked me if I could do a box for Christmas for them, and of course I said yes. And what I've done with this, inside the box, I don't think you can, oh maybe you can see it in here, but I will show you in the yellow one because I know you can definitely see. I've put a circle in the bottom, it's like a little step, so the bottle actually fits in there. And then I've made this as well, so that fits over the top, and that stops the bottle from moving about at the top there. It also has an additional benefit of, because this is a glass bottle, when you pick this box up you tend to squeeze it tight because of the weight of it, but because you've got that extra support in there, it stops the box from getting squashed. And the other beauty is this also fits in the box. So if you wanted to give somebody one of these, this box is just perfect. Okay, so the card pieces that you're going to need, I'll leave that standing up as it has a product in there. I'm using Elegant Eggplant because I know this is the colour that Sharon wants. So this measures 8 inches by 9 5/8 inches, which is 20.2 by 24.2 centimetres. This piece is 3 13/16 of an inch square, which is 9.7 centimetres square, and this is 2 13/16 inches square, which is 7.15 centimetres. Now the 16th isn't too bad, although I know it sounds a bit ooh. It is actually on our scoreboards. 13/16 is this little line here, which is between the 3/4 mark and the 7/8 mark. So that's for 2 7/8, and the 3 13/16 is that mark there, which is between 3 3/4 and 3 7/8. Okay, so it's quite easy to do them. Unfortunately, I needed to use the measurements so tightly so that the inserts didn't allow the bottle to move around, because as I say, it is glass. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp a design onto the cardstock. In fact, let's start from the smallest and work our way up. So this one I am using Merriest Wishes, and I'm using this, which is very much like our dry embossed embossing folder, Softly Falling. I did try one earlier using Gorgeous Grunge, which is quite nice, quite like that one. I also did this one, which I know Sharon won't like because it's too flowery, and this is from First Sight. I do like it, but I'm not making it for me, so I'm sure Sharon will like this one, but it's up to her. Sharon is a customer on this occasion. Right, so I'm not going to eyeball, I'm only going to eyeball this. I'm not using my Stampin' Majig to make sure that I get perfection. Okay, so there's that one. Then the larger one. I'm stamping it what I think is upside down because it's easier for me to get the positioning right, because it's closer to my head this way round. If you're bothered about the design, you want it more even, then obviously your Stampin' Jig would help you out with there. And the ink that I'm using is also Elegant Eggplant, like the cardstock. And if you're using a stamp that it matters which way your paper goes, like this one, it's the 8 inches that's going to be going towards the top. Okay, let's move that out of the way. Now that I've done that, I'm going to start working on the biggest piece and work my way down. So we'll do scoring first. Right. Yep, you can see that. To start off with, for the first one, I'll give you the inches first and then I'll do the centimetres. So you want 1 7/8 and 3 3/4, 5 5/8, and 7 1/2, and in centimetres that is 4.8 centimetres, 9.6 centimetres, 14.4 centimetres and 19.2. Then turn your cardstock clockwise and score at 1 7/8, which is 4.8 centimetres, at 7 1/4 inches, which is 18.4 centimetres, 9 1/8 of an inch, which is 23.2 centimetres. Now you need to go back and at 7 3/4, that one there, you need to score down to the 3rd score line, which is there. Okay, not right the way down, just to the 3rd score line. So you got 1, 2, 3. And in centimetres that line is 19.4. Okay, so 19.4 centimetres down to the 3rd score line. Then the next biggest piece, this is the 3 13/16, or the 9.7 centimetres, and on this you need to score in inches. It's 1/2 inch and 1 inch on all 4 sides, or if you're doing centimetres, that's 1.3 and 2.6 centimetres. Okay, so 1/2 inch, 1 inch, turn, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, turn, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, turn, 1/2 inch, 1 inch. Okay, so that would have been 1.3 centimetres, 2.6 centimetres, turn, 1.3, 2.6 centimetres, all the way round. And then on the last piece, this is your 2 13/16 square, or 7.15 centimetres square, and you just need to score on this at 1/2 inch all the way round, or 1.3 centimetres. So that's 1/2 inch or 1.3, 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimetres, 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimetres, and 1/2 inch and 1.3 centimetres. So that's the scoring done. Now carrying on with the largest piece, if you take your cardstock so that this piece down here is the big squares, you don't want the piece where you've got the 1/2 inch, the squares, and then the next 1/2 inch. You don't want that at all. That's your top. This is the bottom of your box. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut up all of these 3 score lines, and then on this one we're going to remove that altogether. We don't need that. So when you cut up these, you also want to cut very slight miters, so that when we fold it over at the bottom, we're going to finish up with a nice tidy base. Okay, so very slightly miter. That one can be a slightly bigger miter, that's okay. Alright, so that's like that one. And then these, I have been trying to use my big scissors, but I do find them a struggle. Okay, so I'm just doing miters all the way along here. Okay, and I'm going to very slightly miter that as well. I think it's easier to do it from this way. Okay, so it's just that little bit that I took off. Now the top, the first thing I'm going to do, let's turn it round this way now. So this piece here where I've got the long oblong and the little square, I'm going to cut that out altogether. And when you cut down here, don't cut too close to the actual flap. You need to have a certain amount of the actual score line left on this, because if you don't, this is what will happen. If you cut too much off, the box will not stay closed. Okay, and that is what you don't want to happen, because there's, as far as I know, there is no way going back on that unless you fix some extra fixture to that to stop it from happening. So make sure your lines are straight. Okay, so I'm going straight in the centre of this score line, right down to that second score line, and then I'm cutting that off. Now I'm going to cut straight down that score line, right in the centre again. Nice straight cut. Okay, next we need to cut off all of this to here. This is that extra score line that we did when we only did it to the third score line. Okay, so it's just these 3 squares we need off. Let me just use a big one big scissors for this, because this is just a nice straight line. Just make sure I don't cut the flap there. Okay, so don't need that. Now what we need to do is this centerpiece here we need to remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very, very slightly, no, I'm not. Keep that as a straight cut. Keep that as a straight cut. Keep that as a straight cut. And now we need to cut this bit out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold these out of the way so that my scissors can get straight through to take this one off. And this needs to be a nice straight line because this is the front of your box. Okay, now before we go any further, this is, as I say, the front of your box, so you need a little finger dip in there. Okay, so just, this is a 3/4 of an inch circle punch, and I'm just lining it up to make sure that I've got the same amount of gap between the punch and the score line on that side and that side. Make sure it's even, and then I'm just going to punch out just a bit under half a circle. Okay, so that's that one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to round the corners of these. So I'm using my Project Life corner rounder. So I'm going to do the top of the flap. Just make sure it all lines up really nicely into those sides there. Then I'm going to do this flap. Now they're the 3 easy ones done. What we need now is to fold that back so that we can do this corner. Whoops. Okay, now if we fold that over again, then we can do this corner. Now I do find it easier on this occasion working from the front so that I can see that this straight edge is working its way along here, and likewise on this side to make sure that this straight edge is coming along here. Okay, just make sure it goes in nice and straight. Okay, now the last one is a bit more difficult because when you fold that over, you've still got this in the way. So that needs to go down. The problem that creates is you've now got to get this in, and you've got 3 lines of cardstock there. Okay, so if you concentrate on getting this bit in here first, that bit works in quite easily. That's it. And then before you punch, just make sure that it is straight here and here. Okay. Right, I think that's everything I've got to do before I start putting this together. Right, let's just do our folds and burnish them. Make sure we've got some really good folds here. And of course make sure that they line up nice and straight as well. If you get those little hairy bits there, just snip them off. Right, just make sure these are nicely folded down. Make sure that one's straight. And then that one. Okay, now to put the box together, I recommend you either use Tombow or fast fuse. This really does need something strong, especially if you've got, like me, glass bottles in here. Now when you're putting on Tombow, don't go too close to either side. You don't want it oozing onto the inside of your box nor towards the outside. So what I tend to do with this is I squeeze some of the time, and then when I have some glue on the cardstock, then I'll use a nozzle to spread it out a bit. I don't just keep on squeezing all the time, which is why you probably see me going up and down quite a bit. Well, that came out far too quick. So what I do in an instance like that is I take some scrap paper and I just lay that to mop it up. Okay, so that's not going to ooze out anywhere. So what you do is you fold that over, and then that should fold really nicely. Just use your finger on the outside to flatten that. But to get a good fold onto it, a good grip to it, use your bone folder from the inside. Right, now we need to close the base. So what I recommend you do is, if you close your box first, and hopefully it feels a bit tight. If it feels too tight, then you can just trim off a very little bit from here. But it's much better to trim the bits off rather than cut too much off at the beginning like I did with that one, because as I say, I really don't know what I'm going to do with it. Right, now this is the front of the box where I've got my finger tab, which means this one's going to be the last one to be folded down. So what I do, again, I use Tombow. I put the first one down, put some Tombow, second one, Tombow, third one, Tombow, but then I make sure that I do the fourth side to get all the outside. Again, especially with the glass bottle. So fold that over, tip it upside down, open it, and then use your bone folder to make sure you get a good press down. Okay, can't really see anything in there, it's too dark, but that's okay. Alright, so that's the box. Now we're going to do the base of the box, and this is the one that's got all the lines on it. So what we're going to do, all the lines that you cut that are against these pieces here, they're going to be straight cuts, don't miter them. The cuts on the other side of the tabs you can miter. Okay, so what we're going to do, we start on this one here, and we're going to do a nice straight cut just up to the first score line. Okay, so I'm cutting my second score line along from the right hand side, and I'm going up just to the first score line. I'm going to turn my cardstock 90 degrees, and I'm going to do the second score line up to the first score line, and then I'm turning, coming back to where I did this cut. I'm going to the first score line here, and I'm going to cut down to the second score line again, so that cuts off. Turn it 90 degrees again, cut on the first score line to meet up with your first cut. So you finish up with that. Okay, they look like steps. The final cut here, which is where you want to think about doing your mitre, is here. If you cut up there and then do a slight mitre from the tab side. Okay, so you've got that. Now we're going to do this one. We go to the second score line from the right, nice straight cut to the first score line, turn 90 degrees, go to the second score line, nice straight cut up to the first score line, turn it back again, cut on the first score line on the right hand side up to the second score line, so that bit drops off again. Okay, now I'm going to turn it sideways again, and I'm going to cut on the first score line up to my first cut, so that one drops off as well. Now I want to have a cut opposite this one over here, so I'm going to cut straight against this side and then a mitre on the tab side, like that. Now we're going to do the same on this side. So onto the second score line from the right hand side, cut up to the first score line, turn 90 degrees, go to the second score line, cut up to the first score line, turn back again, go to the first score line on the right hand side and cut up to the second score line, so you lose that bit, turn 90 degrees again, cut on the first score line up to your first cut, so you lose that. Now I'm not going to cut that because it's not opposite, it's got to be side this one. So I'm going to do a straight cut here and a diagonal cut here. Okay, now I've just got this one to do. So turn it around, go to the second score line from the right hand side and do a straight cut up to the first score line, turn 90 degrees, go to the second score line, cut up to the first score line, turn back again, go to the first score line on the right hand side and cut up to the second score line, so you lose that bit. Turn it round again, go back to your first score line, cut to your first cut line, that will drop off, and now you need to do this to match up. You need this one to match up with that one. So I'm going to do a straight line against this section, and then I'm doing a slight mitre on the tab. Okay, so that's what you finished up with there. Now we need to cut a circle in here. We're going to use the 1.5 inch circle punch, which is that one. So what I do to work out where the centre is, I use this cross on my grid paper and then I sort of eyeball it, but then I check to see whether I've got it in the centre. So I'm going to say I've got 1, 2, 3 complete squares and half a square, 1, 2, 3 complete squares and half a square, so I know that this is halfway on there. Now I've got to do the same here. I've got 1, 2, 3, almost half a square, 1, 2, 3, almost half a square, so I know that's the centre. So where that dark line crosses with that dark line underneath there, it's in the centre. So what I do is, not allowing that bit to move, I put my ruler on top and I make my ruler line up with the dark line that's going across, and then I just guess where that is, which must be about there, methinks. Yeah, that looks about it. And I just put a tiny little mark. I don't go right the way through because I'm going to be using that circle. So what you need to do is fold back one tab, okay, just one of them, and the reason for that is that's the only way you're going to be able to get the punch in there. If you leave that one down, you're going to finish up punching in the wrong place. Okay, so make that folded, slide your punch in. It can be a bit tricky once you've done your cuts, but be patient with it and it will go. If one side doesn't go, try another side, because you've put your piercer halfway. Oh, there we go. That one's going in a lot easier. So what I'm doing now is making sure that this here has the same gap between that score line as that one has on that side. And then I'm just eyeballing to make sure that that looks as if it's in the centre for me. So I'm going to tilt it so that it looks about right for me, and make sure that I've got those two side bits. Let's move that up very slightly. I think that probably looks about right. So I'm going to go for it. You'll soon see whether you've done it right or not. That gap there should be about the same there, about the same there and there. That one's a bit wider, but it's so close it really isn't enough to worry about. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let me bring it up closer to you. See, they're all pretty close. But we're going to be using this again, so don't lose that. Right, so what we're going to do, all creases and burnish them. I was just so surprised when I was working on this and I realised that the bottle of our spray mist would fit in here. Not that it, you know, plastic bottle really needs it, but it's a nice touch if you're giving it to somebody as a gift. And it also makes me wonder how many other bottles there are in the house that could be done like that. Right, now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is, again, you could use fast fuse for this, and possibly the tear and tape, but I wouldn't use snail. I'm just going to put a little bit of Tombow on each of these flaps. And then to adhere them down, I put one round to make a nice square edge, nice square corner, and I hold it for a count of 5. That will be long enough for it to grip. Move on to this one. Nice square corner, count to 5. Then round to the third one. Hold that in place for a count of 5. And then the last one. Count of 5. Now we need to adhere these down. So more Tombow, just a little bit on the corners there. this will get a bit of extra help holding it down, so this isn't terribly important. So this bit, it is best if you start using your silicone craft mat. So get those down. Now this is very difficult to hold and count to 5. Right, so what I need is, let's take one of the other products. So with my circle, I'm going to put some Tombow onto that, largely round the outside, but it doesn't matter if it goes into the centre. You just don't want it coming round outside the circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it back in there, but I'm going to try and line that up with the way it came out of the circle. Doesn't really matter because I don't think, well, this colour, I don't think it matters, but you may use a much lighter colour, in which case it would be seen from inside. It's just one of those things, you know, it just shows you've paid attention to detail on it. Okay, so then there's that bit there. This hasn't stuck very well. If it would just hold together long enough for me to get that into the box. Okay, so what I do to get this in is I take my bottle, put it into the stand. You see that keeps coming undone, but I'm not unduly worried about it. And then I'm just opening up my box, and then I'm going to put that inside like that, and very gently use the bottle to push the base into position, and once it's down there the bottle will hold it. Okay, don't know if you can see that down there. Yes, you can. Okay, so that bit's in there nicely. Now we're going to do the top piece, and we're going to cut the corners. Now again, when you're cutting against these big bits which are going to form the side of your box, do the straight cut and then the mitre on the tab side. So it's straight cut, slight mitre, then opposite, straight cut, mitre, straight cut, mitre, straight cut, mitre. Okay. Now do the folds, make sure they're burnished nicely. Now to get the hole in the centre of this for the bottle to go, I use my Big Shot because the best size ring for this is a die. The punches that I have either too big or too small. You know, if the hole allows the bottle to move around, then there's absolutely no point in putting the that part in there anyway. So right, so let me just get my Big Shot up. In fact, let me just make sure that I have the actual die here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be using, and it is the smallest of the straight cut circles from the Layer in Circles framelits dies. That's a complete set of straight dies and a complete set of scallop dies which layer into each other. Right, let's bring the Big Shot over. Now I'm just going to eyeball this. As you'll see, my plates are getting very, very warped now. Okay, so just look at that. That looks as if it's in the middle. There we go, just falls out. Right, let's get rid of this. Now to adhere this down, again, 4 corners, fast fuse or Tombow. And then 1 corner, hold it in place, count 5. Next corner. Next corner. Okay, so now this should fit nice and snugly on top there. That's it. So push that into place so it sits on the top of the actual bottle. Okay, see that? Close your bottle and then all done. Okay, so as you hold it, because you've got that extra support there, it doesn't crush the bottle at all. Right, so let me just put a ribbon around this. Oops. This ribbon is from the Christmas catalogue. It comes as a pack of 2 with the Sweet Sugar Plum glitter ribbon. Right, let's see if we can do this. There we go. Just raise it up a little bit. If you find that yours isn't tying very nicely, check to make sure that your ribbons haven't twisted as you've turned them over. Okay, so this ribbon does tie really quite nicely. I was determined not to make that comment until I'd actually done the ribbon. Whoops, there we go. So there's today's box. There's that one. Another one there. In fact, let's put that in there, shall we? Just to show you that it does fit. There we go. So we got the Stampin' Up one now. So brilliant. Many thanks for joining me today. Oh, let me just show you these patterns. That one was Gorgeous Grunge. And this one is First Sight, which I like, but I don't think Sharon will do. That's nice, isn't it? So there we go. That's today's project. Many thanks for joining me today. If you have any comments, please leave a note in the... If you have any questions, sorry, please leave a comment in the box below or email me at janb@janbcards.com. If you'd like to purchase any of the products that I've used here today, please click on the Show More button below and I will put a link for my 24/7 online Stampin' Up shop. I'll also put a link for Sharon's beauty salon as well. I don't know if anybody lives locally enough that would like to visit Sharon. And also I will be putting all the measurements and the products I've used on the screen. Again, if you're watching on a device where you can't see those, I will put them in the box below. And finally, if you've enjoyed my video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button, and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video, which is normally Saturdays. No, it isn't. It's normally on Sundays and Wednesdays. Many thanks for joining me today. Until next time, happy crafting. Cheerio.